Have you ever spent hours designing the ultimate language study schedule only to hit a busy week, fall behind, and eventually just scrap the whole thing out of frustration? Or maybe you've seen language learning YouTubers. Some of them polyglots regularly post study planning content while staying stuck at the same intermediate level for years. Yeah, I've been there too. I used to make these super ambitious plans, but over time I realized they just weren't working. In fact, after a few failed attempts at sticking to my own routines, I'd end up avoiding the language altogether for days. Until I had this simple but kind of game-changing realization. To make real progress, I need to spend less time planning and more time actually studying. Shocking, I know. But this is where I started thinking about language learning through a different lens. Actually, something borrowed from a startup world. The idea of a minimum viable product, or MVP. In business, an MVP is the simplest version of a product that's functional enough to be launched. It's not perfect by any means, it just works. Applied to language learning, your MVP is the minimum amount of study you can do in a day that still lets you check that box and say, yep, I showed up today. For me, that's reading an online newsletter in my target language. It only takes 5 minutes, but even on the most chaotic day, it keeps the language in my brain. I actually talk more about language newsletters in one of my previous videos. If you'd like to check it out, the link is below. From this one habit, a whole new approach started to take shape. Because I realized that what I needed was a way to study every day, but without locking myself into some rigid routine that would fall apart literally the moment life got hectic. Because let's be real, life does get hectic, and I didn't want to keep feeling like I failed or guilty just because I couldn't squeeze in a 1-hour study session. I also started rethinking how I approached my study time. And instead of forcing the same routine every single day, I began to organize my language activities based on how much time and energy I actually had. And some days it was just 5 minutes, other days it was a full hour, but you know what? Both were completely valid. Eventually, this idea turned into what I now call the language menu, a flexible mix and match approach that helps you stay consistent without needing a perfect plan. Because just like with food, some days you're in the mood for a quick snack, and other days you have time to sit down and enjoy a proper full meal. That same goes for language learning. You do not need to do a deep dive every single day. You just need options, something to pick from based on your schedule, mood, and energy. That's why I divide all of my language learning activities into 3 time tiers. The first one is 5-minute snacks for low energy or busy days, which are just bite-sized, easy-to-do activities that keep the language fresh. And that's it. Then we have 30-minute light meals, which are slightly more filling sessions that allow you to get into the flow, learn something meaningful, but also avoid the overwhelm. And last but not least, we have 1-hour full course meals when you're energized and focused and you're ready to dig into it. This is where big breakthroughs happen, but this is also where you may or may not find yourself in a food coma. So what does this look like in action? Let's walk through some examples of things you can do based on each tier of difficulty. And I'm also going to give you some bonus ideas for what you can do if you're learning French. Let's start with the 5-minute snacks. For this, I would suggest you to read a newsletter in your target language. Time to sign off is a great one for French learners. Then you might want to look at doing a quick Quizlet test or reviewing 10 new words. You can also try to come up with your own example sentences. 1 or 2 for each word is pretty doable. And last but not least, you can either listen to a podcast clip or watch a short YouTube video. My preferred channel for French is the Easy French. Excellent videos, really short ones, but give you enough value to spend those 10 minutes with use. If a snack wasn't satisfying enough and you're craving more, you might want to look at the 30-minute light meal sessions. These can be journaling, 5 to 10 sentences max in your target language, and then proofreading it using ChatGPT. Or you might want to watch a short TED Talk and then write down any new words that you encountered. You might also want to read a few pages of the novel in your target language aloud. My favorite one is Rien de grave by Justine Lévy in French. And last but not least, you might look at doing a full-on vocabulary review with example sentences, synonyms, and so on. Finally, if you have worked up the appetite for a full course 1-hour study session, you might want to study one chapter from a grammar book, both rules and exercises. My favorite one is Grammaire en dialogue for French learners. Then you might want to have a 1-hour conversation with a native speaker. It's pretty intense, but still doable. Then you might consider writing an opinion essay and proofreading it with ChatGPT. And last but not least, watching a TED Talk, noting down any new words, then writing a summary and your reflections on that particular topic. If you're learning French, you might try watching La France, Pays de l'égalité by Abnous Chalmani, and then writing down your reflections in French on women's rights and gender stereotypes around the world. And here's the best part. The beauty of this system is that it's adaptable. You do not need to aim for a perfect 1-hour study session every day. Because honestly, how often did this happen anyway? Instead, you're giving yourself options that fit any kind of day. Think of it like walking into a school cafeteria with your lunch tray in hand. You get to decide what goes on it. Some days you might just want to grab a quick snack, like watching a 10-minute YouTube video. Other days you might want a full course meal, like studying an entire chapter from your grammar book or watching and summarizing a TED Talk. The point is, you're in control. Your language menu gives you the flexibility to choose what fits best for you on any given day, without the pressure or guilt of sticking to some rigid plan. Because language learning, after all, is about sustainability, not intensity. And once you stop chasing the perfect plan and start showing up, even with tiny effort, progress becomes inevitable. I encourage you to think about your own language menu. What are the snack, light meal, and full course activities that you can choose from for the language you're learning? Make a list that fits best your time, energy, and interests. And if you're up for it, share it in the comments below. You might inspire someone else and maybe pick a few new ideas yourself. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.